let me ask you a question. How many places have you lived in? Cities, countries, continents, anywhere. So far, I have moved 12 times and lived in a total of 9 different cities. Nashville and Arlington in the US, Ciudad Juarez in Mexico, London in the UK, Ekaterinburg, St. Petersburg, and Moscow in Russia, Astana in Kazakhstan, and Beijing, China. That's the average number of moves most people experience in their entire lifetime, much less in the first 14 years. Although my parents are Cuban American and Russian Georgian, I feel no sense of attachment to any of those cultures. I am dually too American to be fully international, and too foreign to be American. I have no hometown, and I can count the number of times I visited my place of birth on one hand. Who am I? Am I someone that can be simplified with a single descriptor? Or am I something more than just a label? In his 1898 classic, The War of the Worlds, H.G. Wells wrote, "For a time, I believed that mankind had been swept out of existence, and that I stood there, alone, the last man left alive." This quote perfectly describes one of the primary disadvantages of my childhood, where regular uprooting has always been an accepted fact of life. Overall, however, I've enjoyed my childhood, and I realize it's one I'm very lucky to have had. I'm bilingual, English-Russian, but at one point, I had a basic knowledge of Kazakh, and though I'm still learning the language, living in Mexico resulted in my second word ever spoken being in Spanish. Agua. I was asking for water. Perhaps one of my favorite moments of my childhood has been a bittersweet realization. I've found that I have a tendency to fall in love with things only once they're gone. When I live in a city, I often take it entirely for granted, getting to know my school more than my location. For instance, when I lived in Kazakhstan, I explored Astana and Almaty, visiting the Baytrak Tower and Sharon Canyon, seeing a show at the Astana Opera, going to the National Museum, even watching the lights of the Pyramid of Peace and Reconciliation from my bedroom window every single night. But at the time, I didn't realize how special that experience was, how extraordinary it was that I saw those things on a daily basis. So I took little note of it. But now I've learned to value gratitude and the appreciation of opportunities before they pass me by. But there have also been a number of disadvantages to this lifestyle. I've seen a straw scarecrow burned from Maslenitsa in Russia, hiked the Great Wall of China, toured the United Nations headquarters in the US, and even watched an eagle land on a person's arm on the Kazakh steppe. Having experienced all of that, I am still slightly confused by both the metric and imperial systems of measurement. I suppose that makes me a TCK, a third culture kid, defined as someone whose blend of the culture their parents were raised in, the culture they were raised in, and the combination of the two lead to a unique and often complicated cultural identity. This term is typically applied to people in similar circumstances to mine, the children of diplomats, international school teachers, and expatriates, among others. This term is meant to be a label for people like me, reassurance that some not only understand our experiences, but share them. However, even for a label meant to indicate cultural complexity, it still feels insufficient. For one, neither of my parents are from one country, so they are better examples of how expats can have children who are third culture kids. But my experiences can't fit neatly into original culture and host culture, or parents' culture and children's culture. I've lived in 6 countries after all. If my parents have 2 cultures each, and I have 6, shouldn't that add up to make me a 10th culture kid? Of course, although I may not identify with the denotation of the phrase TCK, I certainly embody the connotations. The question, where are you from, has haunted me, a dreaded challenge during introductions. Calling myself American feels reductive, while calling myself Georgian, my other nationality, feels unearned. Claiming to be of the cultures I've lived in seems duplicitous. Even linguistically, I can't culturally identify well. My Russian is semi-fluent, my Spanish is still developing, and my Kazakh is long forgotten, though I can still count to 29 in Kazakh. Sometimes it feels like I don't belong anywhere, like I'll never fit in. But when I begin to think like that, I remember the friends I've made across the world. Attending international schools has been the best gift I could possibly be given, because outside of my syllabus, I formed friendships with people like me, those whose experiences were really quite reflective of my own. But my friends and I all travel, and sooner rather than later, one of us moves away. Although saddening, this has taught me the value of remaining in contact with people, even when it is no longer easy. Staying up late to call friends on another continent to share our exploits in our new countries has been life-changing. And it's shown me that, though I may be rootless in my origins, I can tether myself to the country I live in, immerse myself in a new cultural world, and I have. Suddenly, like a thing, falling on me from without, came fear. This quote by H.G. Wells illustrates how I feel every time I move to a new place. Like a suffocating sense of terror grips my heart and refuses to release it. Like most nomadic youths, I've experienced a sense of loneliness, of painful outsidership, due to my unfamiliarity with the common early childhood experiences of a hometown, shared culture, and easy-to-understand familial history. Even attending international schools, it still felt like I didn't belong. It seemed like everyone had a culture, except for me. However, my visits to the American Embassy, my father's place of work, were always enjoyable, regardless of where I lived. It was a place to meet like-minded individuals, those who value languages, foreign culture, and difficult-to-explain citizenship. It was something that remained constant in my life of perpetual change. This summer, I developed significantly as an individual, finally learning what being a third culture kid means to me. I returned to America for the majority of the summer holiday, staying in one place for almost a month and a half. But it wasn't New York or Washington, D.C., or any other big city you may commonly associate with the U.S. I went to Clarksville, Tennessee, a small town in the south of the country, to stay with my grandparents and keep them company. Needless to say, at first I was disheartened. Why? I initially thought. Why must I waste my vacation in such a way? I was convinced that my brain would slowly degrade until it morphed into an unstimulated pile of gray matter by the time school began again. I was preparing myself to be bored, miserable, misunderstood the entire time. I thought I would feel discomfort, isolation, disdain towards people with a clear sense of national identity. But I was entirely wrong. By meeting less atypical Americans, I learned that I don't have to be defined by any single label. I don't have to be a third culture kid. I don't have to be an impromptu globetrotter. I can be exactly who I am, a unique individual that cannot be oversimplified with a single descriptor. Now I urge you, don't let yourself be defined by how others perceive you. Remember, you are not a collection of experiences. You are you, a valued, complicated, contradictory human being that cannot be shoved into a box. It has taken me a long time to learn not to categorize myself like a lab specimen. But I'm not a Martian, invading someone else's environment and feeding off their culture when I'm not wanted, like in H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds. And neither are you, because I am from nowhere and everywhere all at once.